in this tutorial what we're going to do is look at how to do a track repair, which sometimes happens when you've got a bit carried away with a soldering iron, or you've done a load of repairs or something like that, and as a result, you know, the track's starting to come off the PCB. Now we've simulated that on the soldering license by leaving some gaps in the tracks, and you'll see two spaces that say the word fix up in the top left hand corner, going up to a corner, and also on a piece of horizontal at the bottom just above where it says single link. I'm going to do the first one down here first, the one next to single link, 'cause it's on a straight edge and that's the easier of the two. The first thing that you'll want to do is to grab yourself a piece of single core wire. Now I've grabbed a bit from the reel that we've got in the classrooms, and what I've then done is I've used a wire stripper on it to strip all the insulation off, so I've just literally got just the piece of wire by itself. Now the trick to doing this, if you think of it as most simple, is you're just trying to solder this piece of wire across this gap that I've got just here. But I'm going to try and do that fairly neatly. I also need to solve another problem, which is how I actually make it sit there while I solder it without it coming down and touching here or moving up to some other track I've got on my circuit. And to do that we use our good friend masking tape. So I've got a reel of masking tape here, and usually when you come to it, you know, someone's torn the edge off and it's all wonky or something like that. So what I'm actually going to do first of all with my masking tape is I'm going to cut a straight edge on it using some scissors. Okay, so I'm going to cut a straight edge along. Masking tape loves to be cut with scissors. And what I'm then going to do is I'm basically going to cut a little thin slither off of here. It's just a few millimetres wide, like that. That's probably thicker than I need, but then I'm having to do this at arm's length, so you'll have to forgive me. Okay, what I'm then going to do is I'm going to put my piece that I'm going to use as a repair just off one end of where my repair is needed. I'm looking to come in by not more than about 2 millimetres. Okay, if you want it to be really neat and tidy, you don't really want to cover more space than you absolutely have to. So I'm going to put that first piece down where I need it. I'm not really interested in the left hand side of my repair, just in the right hand side at the moment, because I'm going to trim that once I've done. And once I've got it where I'd like it to be, what I'm then going to do is stick my piece of masking tape over, make sure it's really well stuck to the PCB. Make sure that the actual track repair itself is running nice and straight and horizontal across the board where it also needs to be, like so. And I'm going to stick that down with the masking tape so that, again, you know, I don't know how well you can see this on the actual video, but hopefully you end up with it so it's just literally hanging over the edge and it's stuck in my masking tape. So what I can then do, bear in mind masking tape's made from paper, probably won't like a 200 odd degree soldering iron, so I've got to do this fairly sort of straight away-ish. But I'm going to get in here with the soldering iron, put in a little bit of solder, and take that off there like that. That's now stuck. It dries, as you know, very quickly, and I can actually peel the tape off now because that's done its job. What I then need to do is to get my side cutter and to come in and again measure maybe 1 or 2 millimetres up the other side of the track where my repair's been done, and I can snip that off there like so. So it's now sort of sitting up. Just push it down flat with my finger so it's nicely on the actual PCB, and once the first one's been done, the second one actually is very easy, so I can now get in there again with my solder and I can solder that in place. Again, soldering on up nice and vertical and tall. And of course one of the things that I failed to anticipate was that it's gonna, oh dear, this is turning into a train crash. No, actually I've salvaged it. What happened just a second ago when I started to do that was the solder at the other end of the wire actually melted. So on reflection, what I perhaps should have done, and what I'll do for my second one in a second, is I'll actually put another piece of masking tape on over the other end to kind of hold that in place for me, so that doesn't happen to me again. So let's now do our second piece of track repair. I'm going to need another piece of masking tape, so again just cutting another thin little slither off with the scissors, like so. And putting my next piece in place. Now this one's covering a corner. Okay, so the first one I'm actually going to stick down is the more tricky of the two, which is the one up near the corner end. What I could do if I really wanted to is I could try and put a really fine 90-degree bend in here, but actually I think given the thickness of these tracks that as long as I'm really careful, I reckon I can actually tape that and get that to stand and run along there really nicely. So let's see if we can do that. So I'm going to put it roughly in place. You can always adjust, it's only masking tape. So I'm just putting my masking tape on, lining up on this end, trying to make sure it doesn't sort of touch any other tracks that I might have or anything like that. Let's have a little look. Yeah, that looks pretty good actually. Okay, so that's there like so. I'm quite pleased with that. So I reckon that'll be alright, and that's coming up very neatly to the other edge. So let's solder that first one in place now. So again, usual technique. Okay, a bit too much solder on there actually, unfortunately. I do what people should never do. No, I'm going to try and wipe that off. I'll fix that later. So that's my first one on. And I'm going to reposition my masking tape. And I'm going to bring that up now to the top of that repair, just to make sure it doesn't try and run away on me like it did last time. Okay, so that's basically just taped down on there so that can't go away. Get my side cutter in. And again, I'm just going to do my best to try and trim that out with the side cutter, like so, and get it pushed down flat again. Use the edge of the side cutter blade if you have to. Just be mindful not to try and scratch the tracks, that's very easily done. Come on. Nearly there. That's looking pretty good. And now let's get that other end soldered down. I'm very conscious of the fact that that end is very near the masking tape, so again I'm actually going to rotate my whole stand. Sorry about this, you won't be able to see it, but don't worry, as soon as I've done it I'll show you. There we go. I just did that again there, look, and that's actually soldered on there really neatly. So now that's done, I can bring that off and take a little look at my finished handiwork. So you can see that on this particular repair the bottom solder is okay, but the top one there's a bit too much solder on there. So actually what I might try and do, a bit sort of unplanned, is I'm actually going to use some of this solder wick, which we'll focus on more in the next tutorial really, and I'm going to use some of this just to remove that. Basic technique for solder wick is to place the wick over the top of the solder that needs to come off, put the soldering iron over the top of that. So I'm just going to do that now, give it a few seconds to melt, and hey presto. And actually what I managed to do at the same time was to remove my entire track repair as well. Still, you live, you learn, that's fun. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fix that now after this video is finished, okay? I think you've hopefully got the idea of how to make a track repair, and in the next tutorial we'll look at methods to do some desoldering. So I'll see you then.